Welcome back. In this video we're taking the basics of caching in MODX a little further. If you haven't yet watched the other video on the basic caching in MODX, please do start there, as we do build on that knowledge. Link you will find below. In the basic caching video we learned about when to cache or uncache something in your template as part of the resource rendering process. One key aspect of the default caching behavior is that it's all resource specific. So any chunk or snippet calls that have identical output will still be processed on each individual resource. And any change to any resource or any element will wipe out all those cache files. There are some scenarios where that behavior is not ideal. Perhaps you have a global element that's not different per page, so it only needs to be generated once. Or perhaps you have any third-party integration that you want to cache on a different schedule from resource changes. In cases like this, the getCache snippet is a great tool to use. getCache is a free extra available from the MODX installer. It gives you a snippet that offers more control over how the element you use it with gets written to the cache. Now, just having this option available does not mean you should add it to everything on your website. It's an optimization, so focus on things that are heavy to generate, that might be generated a lot, but have like the same output regardless of where it is. Let's take an example where you have a list of resources in a shared chunk, such as a recent blog post in the footer. You should already be caching that, because it doesn't change based on the user, the URL parameters, and so on. However, MODX will still be generating that on every single page on your website, even though the output is identical on every page. What would be better is to cache that list of resources globally, so it's only generated once and then reused across your site. To do that, we will use getCache. getCache is a simple implementation of the internal caching APIs that MODX offers. The way we use it is by wrapping it around any snippet or chunk that may be relatively slow to generate. So here we are generating a list of resources with PDO resources. To implement global caching, we change the outer tag to getCache, and we specify the element property with PDO resources. So getCache is gonna internally call PDO resources to generate this list. Now at this point, getCache will still write to a resource-specific cache, so we're not quite there in terms of optimizing this behavior. To make it use a global cache, we need to specify some more cache properties. First one of note is the cache key property. This defaults to the resource cache key, and it is basically to configure when this cache is cleared. So when it's using the resource cache, our custom cache file will get cleared whenever the resource cache is cleared. For our use case, that's fine. We're generating a list of resources, so hooking into that same process for when we clear our custom data is perfectly fine. If you want to keep the cache around longer than that, or require the cache to be cleared explicitly from an action in the manager or elsewhere, you can provide a different cache key. What we want to set though is the cache element key. This is used to determine the actual cache file name and allows it to create one cache file that is shared across different pages. The default value for the cache element key is a hash built up from the current resource, any properties provided to the getCache snippet, as well as URL parameters. So this is something you often want to change. So if we once again look at our PDO resources call, where we're just generating a list of resources, what we want to do is we want to add the cache key property to make sure we're writing to the resource cache. This is a default value, so you could leave it out. However, it's nice to be explicit about where you want this to go. It also makes it clear when you're reading your template, okay, that this is indeed tied to the resource cache. And secondly, we're specifying a cache element key, in this case of footer_blog. So this is one cache file that's going to be reused no matter where this getCache snippet call is. This is perfect for a use case like this. Now, should the getCache snippet itself be called cached? For this use case, where we are writing a cache file into the resource cache, you should keep it cached, so no exclamation mark at the start of the snippet. This is because as soon as anything changes to a resource, the cache file will already be gone. It will be reprocessed. So there's no downside to having this cache. For other use cases, the answer may be different. Perhaps you're fetching data from an XML feed that you want to keep around for 30 minutes or any amount of time, instead of connecting it to when a certain resource is edited. In such a scenario, we want to call getCache uncached, so with the exclamation mark at the start. While this will make sure that the snippet is processed every single request, it is lightweight. So calling getCache uncached is not going to hurt your performance, especially if you're using it at the right point, where you're replacing something that does take more processing. Secondly, we want to make sure we set cache key to a custom cache folder. So we take it out of the resource cache and put it somewhere else. And we also want to specify a cache element key. We kind of always want to do that. And the next property is the cache expires property, which is the time in seconds. So you need to do the math on that, for which the cache is considered valid. If you specify 3600, that means that after an hour, the cache is considered expires, and getCache will once again call the original snippet. Instead of specifying an expiration time, you can also use a manual approach, where you're personally in charge of clearing the cache. For this, you need to again call getCache uncached. Otherwise, we only save the output in the resource cache, and we do need it to run whenever something may be different. Again, with a custom cache key and a custom cache element key that matches what we're trying to do. And then we need to either add a menu item with some specific code linked below in the description, which will clear the cache for us, or alternatively, we can write some code, perhaps in a webhook handler or something that knows when to clear the cache, which will clear the cache through the modcache manager in MODX. So to wrap up, getCache is a great way to optimize specific calls on your website, those that are expensive to generate or are repeated a lot on different pages of your website, and especially so if they are independent from the resource they are on. As always, more information and references can be found in the description below. To learn more about MODX, be sure to visit modmore.com/video for an overview of all the videos we've created, and check out this other video on your right for something else interesting. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.